All right, so we're talking about two more buildings on our trip. Let's go across the street from the last building. Oh, and let's take a moment to talk about what we did because the people who are
What
listening to
did
the
we do?
audio version, maybe they figured it out, but maybe they don't know. Is we did a new thing on the YouTubes. You want to explain what we did?
The YouTubes or the tubes you?
Yes.
Yes. So what did we do? So we did a little deep dive dissection of the
Can you
trip.
really do a little deep dive dissection?
No,
And
you
could
can't.
we do a little deep dive dissection?
No. As
Turns out.
as it turns out that once you wind me up, I'm like the little monkey, with
The
the
Energizer
symbols.
Bunny. Yeah,
Exactly.
keep
Um,
going, keep going.
and yeah, well, I
So
was
no, it
going even
wasn't
more
short.
fuller. So it wasn't short. So what we decided to do, and we've been talking about this for a very long time, is something
Internally, not outwardly.
internally.
So
Yes,
people, if you
exactly.
haven't heard this before, this is new to you, old to
We've
us.
we that guy and I have been talking quite a bit about this opportunity to do something called "What Makes This Building Great," where we basically look at buildings. Hopefully, it was interesting because we talked about it in so many different iterations about whether or not we wanted to just talk about something that we've both been to but not been to together,
Hmm.
or or go to places and then talk about them as part of a shared experience. But it just seemed natural that on this trip we saw so much architecture, we experienced so much architecture together, that this was like oh yeah, let's do it, because
Yeah, finally.
there's tons of photographs, tons of conversations while we were in the spaces, tons of just this quiet reverence while we were in the spaces. And it just seemed the right time for us to start to unveil this process. And obviously, it would be a process and we will grow into it. And we would love to hear from everybody as they're starting to look at it and see it, whether or not you're like, ooh, you guys could do this, or ooh, you could do that. Because, that's part of the fun about this podcast, is just being able
If
to.
if we can get sponsors and we can get support, we could actually do this because
Yeah.
here's the
Yeah.
rules. We made rules for this. We had to be in the same place at the same time together
Yes.
at the
Yeah.
same building. And then we have to decide if it's worthy of this kind of
Yeah.
series of types of episodes.
Right.
What I could foresee us doing more of this in the future,
Mm-hmm.
funding allowing, right?
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
we're on opposite sides of the
So,
country. Obviously, there are opportunities for us to come together, once
yeah.
or twice a year for different reasons. And so we could make it a thing. But yeah, we've been talking about this for a long time. And so yeah, we made rules for ourselves, which I just described. Doesn't, we're architects. We could also decide to break those rules sometimes
Oh,
if
yeah.
if
Yeah.
if, if it comes up. But that's our design language. That's our partie for this. And so yeah, we have to be at the same place at the same time, same building, and experience it together.
Yeah.
Because yeah, we have conversations there that kind of then work their way into the subconscious and percolate until we have the formal episode. And the
Right.
reason we only do it on YouTube, not on the audio version. So you guys all heard the audio version, which was not the same as the video version, where we're trying to describe what we saw in the audio version.
Right.
Whereas in the video version, we can actually show it, and we actually
Exactly.
take it a step beyond. Do you care to elaborate on what that is?
Sure. We pull out the old crayons and start drawing on the screen, and, talk about the different things that we see. And one of the interesting things about this, and you'll see it as it unfolds in this episode, is that even though we were in the space together and even though we were talking about certain things, some things we did talk about, we started to discover more and more as we were even talking about it as we were filming and creating the episode, where as you started to see one thing, you were starting to pick up and see something else and something
Mm-hmm.
else. And it's just this, and I'm really glad that this was one of the buildings we chose to start it off with, because it was, as we jokingly said, the gift that kept on giving. You kept looking harder. You saw more, you saw more, and you saw more. And it was just amazing how it continued to unfold. And even today, I was mentioning, Devin, before the show, I was talking about this a little bit with a coworker, and I was discovering even more about this building. And buildings like the British Arts Museum by Louis Kahn, that was as part of that episode that you'll be able to check out, is just one of those buildings that as you're looking at it and trying to discover what does what does make this building great, you get to start to see all these layers that just start unfolding. And it's like some people use the analogy of the onion. You just keep peeling it away and there's more and more and more. And honestly, in this particular case, there was more and more and more. Every time we turn around, like, ooh, look at that. Ooh, look at that.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah. So the Yale Center, the Yale British Arts Museum. Man, what's the right name of that project? What is it actually called? I just call it the British Art Museum. That's what we did. It's only on YouTube. You can check the link in the audio version of the episode to find it, or you can head over to the Archispeak YouTube channel and you can find it there. And so Cormac alluded to the fact that, yeah, we actually are basically pulling out the trace paper and laying it over the plans, except digitally, and we're drawing over these things to convey ideas, and we're drawing over our photographs. And so we've got plans, we've got sections, we've got a site plan, and we basically start and go through the project as we experienced it, as you heard on the podcast, but with diagrams. So it's a little bit more involved for us to create these episodes, obviously. But so we're not planning on trying to film one of the versions and make it work for both YouTube and audio. I don't think that works. So for these buildings that we're talking about, we're really doing them separately as an audio podcast and then as a video podcast. So what we would love it if you would do is subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you get notified when these new episodes come out. And we would love to see you over there. Leave a comment and let us know what you think about that kind of content that we're making as an extension of what we're doing here at Archispeak.
Yeah, and if there's anything that you guys see, it's like, oh, you guys could also maybe do this or do that. Let us know.
Throw it over the fence.
We're here. We're here to grow.
Yep. All right. So in this episode, we're going to build on our last one where we talked about the British Art Museum. We're going to walk across the street in New Haven, Connecticut.
A couple of times.
And the first building that I think we want to talk about today, because it's probably the lightest touch. We only got to just kind of walk around the corner that's kind of exposed of this building. And that is Paul Rudolph's building. And the official name of this building is the Art and Architecture Building for Yale University. And it was designed and built, let's see, the project dates are 1958 to 1964. But I think it was only a couple of years of construction. So there's some pre-years of kind of programming in the school, figuring out what they were going to do, and purchasing land. I think there was a gas station on the corner before this building, for example. And then they had to procure all that stuff. And then, construction, and then there's some other stuff, some modifications during the design, shall we say. And then
it doesn't happen.
And then they built it 2 years. And I think that 2 years is pretty incredibly quick for a building like this to get constructed.
When you had mentioned 2 years, I kind of was a little gobsmacked because looking at the scale, looking at the monumentality, looking at there is no like off-the-shelf details.
No, of course not.
It is incredibly unique. I'm even looking at photographs of handrails on the exterior, and these aren't just your standard, hey, let's go get a pipe rail and slap it on the treads. This is every little bit of this is fully articulated, fully designed, nothing is off the shelf.
No. And it's a 6-story building. I mean, it's not a little thing.
And it's a lot of concrete.
Yeah, it is. And it's
a lot.
It's meaty concrete. I mean, exposed aggregate. I mean, so yeah, we can't show pictures on an audio podcast, but man, the texture. We kind of talked about it a couple episodes ago when we just kind of breezed through it. But man, like, it's not pleasant to hug this building. How would I know?
How would you know? Because you did. When we, get to the video version of this one, if we get to the video version, or even if we breeze through the video version of this, there's photos. We could share them.
Yeah. There's evidence. So it's rough. It's a rough building. It's got a rough texture for sure. And I mean, but because of that, I mean, and this plays back into the Cormac Phelan saying of the trip, shadow play.
I'm looking at the photo that I took of you caressing the building, and the shadow play on the exterior. There is not one consistent surface. It's dancing across the light, the shadow, in the reveals, everything else. I mean, it's dancing across this facade, and there is no 2 minutes in the day that are the same.
Right. Yeah.
And it's just so amazing. There's, you get the big hard shadows that fill in the courtyards or the stairs to the entry or things like that. But then you get like just the dancing of the light around, just on the texture.
Frolicking. It's frolicking.
Exactly. On the texture.
The light happily touches this building.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is just one of those things. It's like, I got plenty to do here. Oh.
So it reminds me of like Ray Cappy's style, except different material, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's planes and volumes in this mixture of void and solid and punctures and planes, and the way that things kind of pass through each other. And it's
great.
I haven't studied this building ever, and I know you've met the man. You've met Paul Rudolph, right? So
yes.
Have you ever looked deeper into this project to kind of understand it?
So this one, no. I mean, I've seen it a couple of times when I've been through New Haven, but never really stopped to at least the extent of like you and I did, where we were at least able to walk around the exterior. Full disclosure for everyone, the reason why we didn't get a chance to go on site, this was at the end of their school year. People were wrapping up. There was probably nobody really there anymore.
The doors were locked.
And so the doors were locked. And
yeah, we tried.
And
we rattled the handles.
How do we know that? I think I think here and a couple of other buildings in some other universities that we visited, we tried every door that we could find.
But wow, like such a cool entry procession. Obviously these amazing stairs that are. This kind of plays into what we saw in the Kahn building with those reveals, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of reveals going on here too. A lot of things that are separating like horizontal planes from vertical planes. I'm just looking at a picture of the stairs that are this monumental stair that leads up, but they appear to be thin planes that are floating and stacked above each other.
Right.
I mean, but it's all one big pour, I assume, right? So maybe not one big pour, but it's all the same material. They didn't pour every tread separately. They're not prefabricated. This is all cast in place stuff.
Right.
And so it's really amazing what can be accomplished with thoughtful formwork. And I could only imagine that's the contractor's job in this, right? It's not like you, I mean, that's one of the interesting things about designing a project like this is you don't design the formwork when you design the building. You design the building that shows up, that is the product of the formwork. And so I think that that's such an interesting way to look at this building is to know how much formwork is involved and therefore waste, but an incredible level of craftsmanship. We kind of alluded to that as well in the British Art Museum with the incredible craftsmanship of the formwork to get the concrete to the point that they got it to.
Right.
It's very similar here, but this is before that particular project. Right. And it's really beautiful how they pulled that off. And I, when it comes to, I assume this building kind of falls into the brutalist category. Would you?
Oh, it not only falls into,
so
it is 100%.
It defines it. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's one of those projects where, I mean, this is why you can fall in love with a brutalist project. I think brutalism is rather polarizing. So I'm sure there's a lot of people who don't like this building. They probably don't like that texture. They probably think it's kind of abrasive and harsh. But I think that when I look at it, especially on a nice sunny day, like we got to visit it on, it's like when we talked about the Geisel Library, right? It's like, the Pereira building on the San Diego campus. It's like it does depend on the weather when you go visit it, kind of the feeling you're going to get from a material like raw concrete when the whole project is that. And there's various textures of concrete on this project, and there's some that like visible water staining and things like that it just adds character to the building. But it didn't hurt that we went on a nice sunny day because I thought that it was pretty warm and inviting, and maybe that's just the weird architect in me.
Well, one of the things that, as we just kind of take this a little bit further, you're talking about the textures and the assembly of all of the different materials and stuff. And so when you're really looking at the assembly of all those different materials, one of the things that I do kind of like find very interesting, this is an interestingly equal balance of a very vertical building and a very horizontal building, because
More vertical than horizontal.
more vertical than horizontal when you look
On the
at it
corner, for sure.
when you look at it in massing. But when you really look at it, follow all the lines, the horizontal lines through, they line up perfectly. You have this change in texture from the rough texture to this smooth texture that kind of like infills between windows. And you just see these lines continuing on all the way around. And so if you looked at it in one view, you're definitely going to see, if you look at it in massing, you're definitely going to see an extremely vertical building. But then if you look at it in texture, you're going to see, in my own personal opinion, you're seeing a lot of the horizontality because of the way that the control joints and the banding of the windows and the banding of the floor edges, the slab edges as it was pulling through and stuff. And it creates an interesting, this dynamic between vertical and horizontal, because it literally, I mean, the first thing you see is, damn, that's tall.
Yeah.
And it's not that big of a building, but it feels tall.
It's pretty big. It's 117,000 square feet, 6 floors. I mean, over 6 floors. It's not that
floors,
big.
only
It's not,
I was going to say, that's
but
not that
what's
big.
interesting to me is this isn't a curtain wall building, right?
No.
There's the glass is secondary to the concrete, and it's
Right.
only where it needs to be. And so, like, when you visited some of Misa's projects in Chicago, when you talked
Yeah.
about that trip, year-wise, where were we with those? Do you remember?
They actually were either a little bit before this or right around the same time.
So when Misa's like Rudolph zagging, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
what's
Yeah.
interesting
Yeah.
here is this is like the structure is on the outside of the building. The verticality of
Yeah.
this building is holding the building up, and they're not trying to hide it behind glass or tuck it
Right.
behind glass or give it the kind of this curtain wall glass shiny building. This building is very much about expressing this concrete and
Yeah.
this playfulness, I guess, of the horizontal and the vertical and the planes and the intersections and the volumes. And it's a really interesting, intricate study carried out with concrete. I mean, that just seems super complicated to me, kind of thinking through the whole, going back to that formwork idea.
If you look, and this is where, it may be a stretch. And so people who are probably listening is like, yeah, right, nice try. But if you look at it and you look at the overlapping shapes, you look at the interlocking shapes, I see a lot of roots in traditional Japanese architecture, because you have that interesting way of joining things where you're interlocking them. It's almost like Lincoln logs, where you're kind of interlocking things, but then
Things are kind of
project
lapping on top of each other and
Exactly.
sitting, the horizontals especially are coming in different places. And that's what takes me back to the Ray Cappy feel of this, is just this overlap that you're talking about between not different materials, but
Right.
different parts
Masses.
of the building. Yeah.
Exactly. Because
planes.
there's you look at these and you've got like these expressions at the top, but they kind of pull through and there's like these voids that they pass under, but then you've got these overlapping and interlocking massings that kind of create voids, create openings, create this shift in the material. As you said, kind of create this opportunity to have one material look like it shouldn't be supporting another material, but it is. It's an interesting, I mean, this is an extremely dynamic corner of an intersection between two streets. And I was trying to zoom in to see York Street and something. I'm sure somebody will let me know what that is, but
Chapel, York and Chapel.
So York and Chapel. So
I just
there is
did
a
the
chapel
thing they
on
did in the
corner.
movies. I did the zoom and enhance. That's what I just did.
Look at you.
Yeah.
My photos were kind of slightly oblique, so it cut off the chapel part. I could see it was a C. But I mean, so it's, you think about, for me, one of the things that I was thinking about when we're standing on this intersection in this corner is you got such an interesting collection of modern and classical architecture all kind of coming together. You've got, We'll talk about it in a little bit. You've got the Yale University Art Museum uh, by Louis Kahn. And immediately across the street from that is the Rudolph building. And then immediately across the street from that is that chapel. And then right next to that is the British Arts. But immediately across the street from British Arts is the Yale University Museum. But the way that they all come together and create this interesting dynamic we looked at in the video episode of the British Arts, the sketches that kind of showed the language between this traditional architecture and all of this modern architecture, and how some pay homage to the traditional architecture and some, the architecture building, not only pay homage to it, but it's not as apparent and not as clear as what, say, Kahn did. It still has this solidity. It's got this kind of interesting massing, but in a completely just like, rules be damned kind of fashion, right?
Can we talk about or hypothesize? How do you think the design process worked on a project like this back then?
It would be oh my Lord! There's
study models, like lots and lots and lots of study models,
because I'm sure
because this is like if you're thinking nowadays 3D modeling, this is a solid modeling project full of Boolean operations, right? It's like push and pull, right? This is splitting faces, pushing and pulling, to get these really interesting overlap, and then that you would get shot down because that's too expensive and you can't do that with concrete and all these things. And then you look at this building from 1960 basically, and it's all there. And I'm just wondering, how did they design this? And obviously, architects can think spatially, and I think we've probably done at least versions of projects like this, at least in school studio, and those never became real, right? So when you look at this, and I mean, it's pretty incredible to just see the articulation of solid concrete, cast in place concrete, and just thinking through the sequencing of the formwork and the different textures that had to be reversed in the formwork, board form, this super rough kind of corrugated exposed aggregate look. You've got some horizontal board form, you've got some smooth, you've got horizontal reveals. Again, all this stuff, you have to build the negative version of it in the formwork to produce this. And it's just, those are like layer 3 and 4 of articulation. Layers 1 and 2 here are still, they're bigger moves, but they're incredible. And that they actually did that is just absolutely incredible, that they were able to pull it off.
And look at...
And we didn't even get to go inside, people.
We didn't even get to go inside. And I want to go back to, so I'm looking at an image of the entry stairs into what I'm assuming is the main entrance.
Yeah.
And it's such a asymmetrical sequence of going up the stairs where you just think you'd go up this grand set of stairs, kind of unobstructed. But there's kind of like this zigzag between masses and stuff where you see the stairs go past this,
there's these
massive
big
columns.
Monolithic plain columns that come down and hit the stair in a couple different spots.
And
you
kind
of,
they kind of divert. You've got to move this way. You've got
divert your circulation from this side to that side, and
exactly.
Oh man!
And what's interesting about that is it makes what would typically be kind of like a mundane pathway, very interesting, very kind of like you're now very conscious of the stairs, instead of it just saying, oh, it's just a set of stairs that we walk straight up.
It's not the most efficient, right?
It's
not taking you on a journey,
but you're very
it's not a complicated journey, but it's still a journey.
But you're very aware of that sequence to get into the building, because now here you are, you're forced to make decisions on what would normally be just, I'm holding onto that center handrail from the street to the first landing. And then now you have a decision to make. Do I go left and squeeze between the column and the, course
the narrow version
wall,
or the wide version?
Or the wide version. And it's just like these interesting kind of like decision making. And
he's not making the decisions for you. He's giving you options. And I wonder what the inspiration for this the way that this kind of got articulated is because to me, like in my personal experience, this is like slot canyons in Zion or Grand Canyon, like
Right. Yeah.
Utah desert, where things have been chipped away over time.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's designed this way, like it didn't happen over time, but you get to have these experiences because water did all this work or glaciers did all this work for you to reveal this thing underneath. And that's kind of how it feels here. It's like this narrowing as you're approaching the entry to the building, like it literally has been removed from the solid mass. This is a very kind of subtractive feeling building. And I just wonder what the inspiration there was. I'm sure it's written. It makes me want to go kind of explore and figure out more. But yet it's really interesting way to do it. It doesn't feel like the mass is additive. It feels very subtractive.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you kind of hit it. It's just those slot canyons where they were solid and then just through time they eroded. And you're looking at these and the way that they asymmetrically are eroded in all these different masses. There is nothing that's, in fact, actually, one of the columns that you have to make that decision of going around is the fire department connection, but you don't see it because it's so kind of like nicely kind of like blended away.
Right.
I will say something, if I could, is that I'm zooming in because you suggested that there's this ability to like zoom into photographs.
On computers, yeah.
I know, right? And so apparently their gallery within that building was open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on weekdays, which we were there. We apparently just didn't read that sign.
Bummer.
Man.
Well, one of the things that you talked about when we were there that I thought was cool, because, we were just staring at the corner of the building for 30 minutes, was the way that, and it wasn't at night, so it's a little tricky to see this, but they have these surface-mounted can light fixtures on the ceilings of the multiple floors, and you can see through the glass where those are. I mean, like I said, it wasn't night, so the lights weren't necessarily on. Even they were on in the lobby, it looks like, but not in the corner that I'm talking about. But you talked about how they align on each floor. So from the outside, when you're reading it, you see that copy paste of floor to floor. They didn't have copy paste. They didn't have copy paste back then, right? So what's interesting though is like there's a picture I have where you can see in the building, and there's 3 round surface-mounted cans, and then on the outside there's 3 square inset ones into the concrete on one around the corner of the building. And it's just it's really interesting to see the customization, like the changes in the rules from inside to outside, for example. It's really interesting to see the variety and the variation that happens all around this corner of the building. Very, very interesting.
Yeah. I found that photograph that you and I were talking about on that, and then that rhythm that it does go up and aligns with the 3 squares at the top, and it's just okay. They didn't have copy and paste. They did have trace.
They had light boards and Mylar.
Exactly. See, so there you go.
Layers, very cool. All right, so I mean, I feel like it's hard to talk more about this building because we didn't get to go in it, but right across the street there's another building to talk about, right?
Yeah, what was that?
Which building was that? Let me go back to my photo library here, and so across the street, the Yale Art Museum, the Yale University Art Gallery. Sorry, not museum.
How dare we?
And I was looking up this project too, and let's see, this was older than the Rudolph building. Okay, so this is 51 to 53 is the project timeline for this one,
and this is 10 years. Oh, sorry. You said 50?
51 to 53.
This is almost 20 years
before the British
Art Museum. And so it's kind of interesting to see kind of the expressions, the evolution of the architecture between the 2 buildings, because there's one that feels very modern in comparison to the one where I would contend, even though it is very modern, still is very rooted in kind of classical architecture. Again, come at me, bro. Yes. I will sit down and I will talk through this with anybody who wants to challenge me on this. And
that's very gentleman of you.
Yes.
Yeah. You're a gentleman.
But one of the interesting things about this one is just kind of like that it's a kind of a tale of three different, spaces within the art gallery. There's the Kahn building. Then, if I'm wrong, but the building that looks more of a kind of like traditional Gothic, actually. And now that I'm zooming out and looking at it, that Gothic building was actually it's new construction or newer construction, not new to like today, but new to that.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No,
okay.
According
That's
to
interesting.
and so what was very interesting about this one is, this is definitely a collaboration between Lu Kahn and Ann Ting, and she was working with him and actually one of his mistresses. Or sorry to bring up your dirt there, Lou, but and it was so very interesting because she had an affinity for geometric shapes, which of course he did too. And so they collaborated really well together and to be able to carry this kind of like very geometric kind of idea throughout. And, once you go into it, and again, this is kind of very typical to a Louis Kahn building, is that the exterior may be very well done, but it's usually typically very understated.
Yeah, nondescript.
Yeah.
Looking at the outside, you have no idea what's going on inside.
Oh, yeah,
there.
no. And what's interesting about that is that's his philosophy of what that servant and served philosophy of architecture is, that the building itself is there to serve its purpose. The purpose is it's an art gallery. And so the art really should be that. But how do you then use the building to kind of accentuate and elevate, those spaces and stuff? And obviously in the British art, we were both kind of flabbergasted at that elevation of the space and stuff. And this one had a very different, but also some very similar feels. I felt like this one was it was darker. It was cousin, but it was darker, right?
For sure. Way darker. On purpose.
Yes.
This is way darker, coffered triangular geometry in the ceiling, waffle-ish slab, but a triangular waffle.
Right.
Kind of reminded me a little bit of the Sheets Goldstein house by Lautner in that way. Obviously, like lots of architects have used triangular shapes and waffle slabs before. But what was interesting was the different kind of coffering in the different cells of the triangles. Some of them were prisms, some of them were vertical extrusion kind of voids. Some had lights in them, some didn't. But to your point, like about the geometry, right? And what makes it similar to the building across the street is, he carved away the corner so that you knew where to go into the building, but it was on the corner, right?
Right.
This building happened before that building. You also entered on a corner, but it wasn't carved away. You entered into a space that was then the lobby kind of let's just call it, I don't know, pre-programming space where it's like you come in, you shake off the umbrella, you hang up your coat, you check into the gallery, and then you go into the exhibits. And what's interesting is you pretty much get to a very similar thing that you did in the British, which was the vertical circulation. You get to that very quickly. And again, it's a cylinder in a square plan, and it's kind of free from the plan. It's just this separate volume and object. But this time it doesn't stand all on its own, free from the slabs. It's piercing through the slabs. Exactly. It's a void. And in the cylinder walls it's continuous on the inside, but on the outside it's broken by the floors as it passes through them. Very similar but different. And on this one, instead of having a square stair scribed inside the circle, the cylinder, we have triangular stairs, right?
Yeah. And what was very interesting about
here.
And what was very interesting about that is that was somewhat the motif, obviously, of that geometric expression was the triangle. You had it in the coffered ceilings. You had it in the intersection of the roof of the cylinder, the stairs within the cylinder, even the way that, and I think when we started to take a look at it and we were up at the very top of the stairs and we were looking down and you saw the pattern, the scoring pattern in the material, and you could look straight down and you could see that everything comes together in a triangular pie shape to a point in the center of the circle.
Yeah.
So, you've got that center point and then it radiating out from that. And so it was very interesting how he holds true to how each of these geometries would interact with each other.
Yeah.
You know, um,
And on this one, the stair is like a black travertine or something dark, very dark.
yeah,
And it's continuous. So it's not
that's
individualized treads that are pulled away from the
yeah,
edges of the concrete. They actually extend beyond the edges of the concrete. So what's interesting is the contrast in stair design, shape, color, language, rules.
hmm
It's all very different, but at the same time, you look at it and you're like, oh, it's the same. It's just coming from the same mind. It's coming from like this really incredible, rigorous study of these materials, but also how can we switch it up?
right,
It looks to me like there's this constant question of how can we switch it up, but still have the same DNA, right? It's like a
right,
different expression of the same DNA. It's really cool.
yeah. And what was interesting about the scoring patterns and how they intersected to that kind of center point, but they also, and I'm looking at a couple of photos where it also hinted at the continuation of the cylinder, but
Hmm.
just as a floor pattern rather than the actual solid mass within that.
Right. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was really cool. Yeah, so where the opening is punched in to get into the
right.
cylinder, you still see the circle scribed on the floor because it's like a Schluter almost. I don't know what
Yeah.
the right
It,
word for that is. Let's call it that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's like a Schluter strip. I got a picture of it. So maybe when we do the video versions podcast, we'll show that.
yeah,
And then what was interesting here was the top of this cylinder. I don't have a roof plan, but it looks like it pokes through the roof instead of being
yeah.
held short of the roof like it was at the one across the street. And again, we've got glass block, but in a
Right.
very different expression
In
here. And
in
so
a clear story kind of version.
it's a clear story with this triangular,
Mhm.
like volumetric, I don't know what's the right way. It's like an extrusion, but a truss. It's like
Right.
these beams with a solid cap on top that are holding up the cylindrical cap, which is allowing this clear story of glass block. Man, it's hard to
Right.
explain this stuff on an audio podcast, but
Oh
we're doing
yeah.
a pretty good job.
Yeah. And for those of you who are just like, man, I want to see this, pull up some
Go see it.
photographs.
Yeah.
Go see it. Go see it for absolute certain.
Go see it for real.
But also just you wait. There will be.
There will be
I got a picture of myself. Oh, it's from you. Okay. I was like, wait, why do I get a
How did
picture
I
of
do that?
myself? That's creepy. Okay, so there is one thing that we do need to talk about in
What's that?
both of these and a couple of other spaces. I kept experiencing a very weird vertigo in these stairs.
Oh, yeah,
Do you
yeah.
remember?
You did.
And it was
Right,
just,
I remember. You didn't want to get close to the edge. Yeah.
and for some reason, it just there was, you're like, ooh, come take a look at this. I'm like, nope, I'm good. I'm good right
Well,
here. I was just,
so a lot of stairs, like a lot of stairs that would get designed today, it's really difficult to get a continuous stair to go all the way, right?
Right.
It's expensive. You got to do a lot with the smoke evac or with fire separations and all these things. And so
yes,
this is before a lot of that. But yeah, it's a very kind of sculptural stair on the inside of a cylinder, and you can see all the way up. And when you're at the top, you can see all the way down. And I
yeah,
think that kind of is part of that, right? It's just seeing
yeah,
all of it and knowing that it spirals down, and that kind of just sends your mind into this visual spiral, and that is probably
yeah, yeah.
affecting your inner ear.
And and I've got some great photographs. I can't wait till we go through this with the video version of this. But this is another one of those where, as you said, the stairs are held off. And so, you see this
Oh yeah.
gapping between the stairs and that. And that was really sort of where it was sort of like these stairs that were somewhat floating in the space, and anytime I would get to a landing, I'm like, okay, I'm good here. And it's, damn it, we got to keep going up.
Well, because this is a triangle of stairs, if you're looking at the plan view, scribed inside the cylinder, there's more space between the stair and the wall of the cylinder
Yes,
here than
yeah.
there is when it's a square inscribed in the middle of a cylinder, which we saw in the British Museum. So in the British Museum, that gap between the rise and the run,
Oh yeah.
the stair itself and the wall was smaller than it was here. And so here the
Yeah.
light really bleeds through
All the
beyond the
way
stair
down.
to make
Yeah.
it feel like this is one continuous space.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And looking at and zooming into the detached run of treads,
Hmm.
um, we're talking about at its widest is probably like 2 feet.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
And the
it just
railing is a lot lighter weight here, so you can
it
see
is
through it
there's
more.
there's a little
And it
bit.
feels like, okay, the
I,
stair's
I'm
heavy, it's
I'm
connected,
I'm
it's all one
yeah
material, it's darker, and then the railing is light and it's stainless steel and it's
yeah
mesh and it's super lightweight
yeah
in
I'm reaching
comparison to what we saw at the British
I'm
Museum.
reaching for a handrail that would be attached to the wall, and it's actually 2 feet away from the wall,
Yeah.
and it is. I don't know why though. When I'm looking at this stair, it also feels like, the 80s kind of geometry that you used on like album covers, like say Duran Duran or something like that, where it's just this
Well,
weird kind of like
this came before
geometry.
that. This
Oh,
came before that. But yeah,
yeah,
very
they
simple.
ripped them
It's
off.
very simple geometry. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the one thing that we see is like he's able to use very, very simple geometry
To
and
great effect.
to pull off some amazing effect.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
and then you pass through the galleries, and there's the more traditional Gothic section of it that you go through, and it holds a
Yeah.
lot of antiquity, type
Hmm.
art. Whereas his in the gallery portion where he's at, it's a lot more there was some very modern art. Then there was also some kind of indigenous art as well, and then you get into the Gothic part of it.
Hmm.
And it sets it up for these beautiful kind of like vistas from when you come inside, you're somewhat oriented. You just walk past the stairs into kind of like this area where you can see long way down to the Gothic portion or into the smaller galleries of the Kahn building. But it's starting to set up these kind of like areas, again, very similar to what the British arts is. You come in and you're forced to actually turn. And when you're turned, you're forced to come into the space a little bit more. And then once you come into that space, then it starts to reveal the pathways of all of the other directions that you can go at in this. And so it's not forcing it. It doesn't need signs to tell you where to go. The simple massing, the simple moves of, okay, you can't go any further this way because there's a stair in your way. So when you turn this way, you're confronted with the options of going straight ahead to the visitor's desk. And as you're starting to walk that way, to your left and to your right, the opportunity for you to go in other directions to the other galleries and stuff. And it's just the simple way that he lays this out. So it's not clutter. It's free of kind of visual clutter. It emphasizes visual order so elegantly, not eloquently. It's both.
It speaks to you. Yeah.
It does.
I think what's interesting too that I want to talk about for sure is there's actually this offset wall that separates, like creates these glass panels that you would walk in. So the stair itself is behind glass doors. And so it's like a separate space from the galleries, which is probably a good thing for like sound transmission, right? The stairs are a hard material. You're going to get squeaky shoes and people, walking up and down stairs, and that sound would bleed into the galleries, which is nice to control that with the separation. But that wall that is pulled off of the cylinder, this giant plane that just runs all 4 stories of the building, is brick, and it's not normal brick.
Right.
It's kind of an oddly proportioned, in my
Yeah.
point of view, soldier course kind of CMU block, but it's almost like single cells instead of double cell block. If you're
Right.
imagining like what a normal CMU block looks like, it's half of one of those, and they're pinkish in color. And so again, kind of playing with texture, and then the inside of the cylinder that the stairs are in is a vertical thin board form. And so you get this streaking. And so again, you're getting this real interesting play of cylindrical wall, concrete, thin slat board form, flooring, polished terrazzo, dark, really dark, almost black.
Yeah.
And then this pinkish color, lightly textured, probably a honed block wall,
Right.
and then glass, kind of putting it all together.
Yeah.
It's really nice. Like, it's just super nice.
One of my
there's 4 or 5 in the stainless steel rails. There's 5 different materials here, and they're all super tasteful, super high performing as far as maintenance goes, right? Like this is all heavy duty stuff, and none of it's painted or anything, you know.
So if and look even harder at the
Yes, sir.
CMU wall, and you'll notice that CMU wall is almost a perfect square.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to basically draw a line through the corners diagonally through that, right in the middle of that, the diagonal intersection of the lines that you just mentally drew is the number of the floor you're on. And it's just this simple little number, just a simple
Yeah.
little stainless
Signage
steel
signage
one.
is not a big part of this
It is
project.
not a big, it is absolutely unnecessary. All you need to know, what floor am I on? Oh, I'm on
Right.
one. So it says one. Not in it's even funnier. I don't see any exit signs. I mean, I do see some exit signs. So let me restate that there are exit signs, but like when you're inside the stairs, there's no exit signs.
Yeah. Yeah,
They're
you're right.
outside of the stairs, unfortunately. Damn exit signs.
Do you want to talk about like the ceiling here? I mean, that's really the last thing I want to talk about is the ceiling.
Oh
So we
yeah.
talked a little bit about like the coffered ceiling, waffle, the triangulated waffle slab thing. But the other ceiling in this kind of utility core of the building, right? We're talking about the utility core with the vertical circulation, the elevator circulation, probably the bathrooms,
Mhm.
right? Which is totally Kahn, right? The service and the served, right? That you talked about
Right.
earlier,
Right.
private and the public. And there's like, so there's this utility core of the plan, and the ceiling here is open ceiling, but with an extruded metal grate. And so very different. Like
Yeah.
this is very different from the really heavy waffle slab to see this, but also I'm assuming extremely functional, right? It's better than a traditional, what you would call now a drop ceiling, right? With just
Right.
T-bar, because it's metal and it's nicer. It has it picks up the lighting, a little bit reflective. It looks like stainless. It probably is, but it's like, so it's nicer than a traditional, what we call a drop ceiling, but at the same time, like it's simple in that I can access what's up there, and we're not trying to hide
Mhm.
what's up there, and we're putting it a little bit on
Right.
display, but not fully on display.
Also, an interesting thing is, and I know that you've sort of moved on from the coffered ceiling, but one of the things that you notice about the coffered ceiling is that it's actually two ceiling. It's basically the structure,
Mm-hmm.
then sandwiched the mechanical, and
Mm-hmm.
then the actual concrete kind of coffering is below all of that. So you've created an interstitial space for the mechanical.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you see the punch outs and stuff, those punch outs in that coffered ceiling are access to the mechanical systems, or their areas to put the lighting, areas to put the sprinkler heads, areas to do kind of like the utilitarian stuff. And it was done in a way that is just, I want this to be I want that kind of coffered almost, yeah, the coffered ceiling effect. But I also know that I have all of this other mechanical systems and things that I want to do, but I also want it to feel very concrete, pure and raw and everything else. But it was interesting, and we'll go into it a little bit further when we start dissecting the building, the concept of how he achieved that ceiling. It's pretty amazing, because it's a simple, like, basically sandwiching of mechanical between two slabs of concrete, and just how he achieved the two different concretes, one flat floor slab, the other one a very articulated geometric coffered ceiling. I don't know if you remember this, but I was somewhat enamored by how he treated the fin tubes at the windows, and I don't know if you have a picture of that or not, but I've got one, that basically he had what looks to be like a very exposed fin tube system with the tubes and all of that other stuff, but then he wraps it with just expanded wire mesh that's very strong. It doesn't get beat up. The fin tube doesn't get beat up, but you can see through it, and you can see kind of like all of the
Mm-hmm.
inner workings of the fin tube system. And it's just quirky and cool, but it's also bench height, so you can sit on it, and it's strong enough so you could sit on it. It's just this weird little simple thing that
I do
honestly,
remember that now that, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, so you're talking about the indoor heating system. That's what you're
yeah,
talking about.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean,
Um,
I'm a Californian at heart, so when you
I
say fin
was
tubes, I have no idea what you're talking about.
us East Coasters, we know
You're talking
exactly
about
what fin tubes are.
interior
Yeah,
radiator heating. Okay.
yes,
Yeah, you
exactly.
turned it into a bench, basically.
He turned it
And
in.
yeah, it was really cool. Yeah,
Yeah,
I like that
yeah,
too.
exactly.
Very interesting building, very interesting contrast and similarities to what's going on 20 years later across the street.
Yeah,
Right? Really interesting to see kind of both of those, and what he learned over those 20 years and how he chose to express these two buildings
yeah,
differently.
yeah.
To have that opportunity is just absolutely incredible, right? To do
Oh,
these across the
absolutely.
street is probably like, I wonder how much he debated if he really wanted to do it. I mean, he probably needed the work. He's an architect.
And just finishing up his biography, he was a horrible businessman.
Mm, mm.
And he was always on the verge of bankruptcy at any given time.
There you go.
Yeah. So,
Well, any
um,
any
how does
closing thoughts on this building?
it's it's interesting in the way that it still speaks to you and it's still filled with all of these layers. But one of the interesting things is that there's a layer of complexity to this one that the British arts doesn't have. British arts was even more stripped down from this. And you're like, how could you strip down more from just like concrete floors and ceilings and stuff? But with all of the interplay of the geometry, whether it's the way that you were transitioning, as you were pointing out, flooring material to from one section to another, to the way that you had block and glass and stone and all of these other different interplays. There was a lot going on in this building. It was very simply articulated, but there was still a lot going on. And so that 20-year transition between the two buildings, almost he almost discovered restraint, in my opinion,
Mm, mm.
in a way that you can see in, say, Exeter, because here's the time frame of what were the buildings being built at the same time as the British Arts was British Arts, Exeter, and Salk. And those were like, and they have such a very similar language going on to them. And then you have some other buildings which we haven't visited. Hopefully, sometimes we can have an opportunity to visit them. But the work that was going on in India there was parallel things going on to the language that was going on in India to a few of the things that were going on in the States. There's a building in Indiana that not too far from that I'd like to go and visit that has some very similar languages in its treatment of brick and arches and stone. That's less about what's going on with this kind of like trifecta of British arts and Exeter and Salk, which are very similar in languages of at least like the interior expression and how on the Salk it sort of takes that interior expression that we saw at British Arts and I keep giving away like the building that I'm so excited to talk about in the future. You take these interior expressions and the Salk turns them exterior. And this is something I know that you've been to a couple of times and it's still on my bucket list, high bucket list. And thank you AIA for next year because it's going to be down in San Diego. And yes, I'm signing up for that tour. Actually, no, I'm not signing up for the tour. I ain't signing
Yeah,
up.
you
I'm
do.
going, but I ain't
You
go.
have to get a tour. You have to get a tour to
Yeah,
get inside. You have to.
yeah.
It's not
I
just
know.
open like it used to be.
Look, I walk around with a bunch of architects. I want to walk around with one architect, you.
Maybe there's another way we could do this. Okay, so help us out, audience, help us out. I think with this one, that idea that you had that he learned more restraint over time, I think that's really interesting. I think what's so interesting to me about these buildings is just how well packaged everything is.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes.
You were talking about these ceilings and the space between these two concrete things, and we talked about it during the British art too. It's like those big trapezoidal shaped beams at the top that are also housing mechanical, and then there's another building we might talk about in the future that does something similar. And it's just like the integration, the really wonderful way that all of the systems are integrated into
Yes.
the
Yeah.
architecture, structural, mechanical, all this other stuff. We talked about kind of even the fire department connections, and it's like the way that it's integrated is so thought through that that's what makes these so successful in my eyes as architecture. It's like, wow, a lot of thought and detailing went into making these as really pure as they end up being just from an experiential level,
Yeah.
which is where a lot of buildings fall apart. A lot of modern buildings fall apart because we're all encouraged to spend less time on buildings, spend less time designing, spend less time detailing, get it done faster, do more with AI, whatever it is.
Yeah.
There's always this kind of opposition of amount of time allowed to do the work.
Yeah.
And then what actually happens when when that happens, what's the outcome of that? So you look back at these, and I think that's one of the things that makes them so successful. It's just how well integrated everything is.
Yeah. No more ants.
All right. Until next time.